Okay, so Senator Flores is on his way in here. We'll go ahead and call to order the meeting of Senate Education today, and thank you all for being patient, and thank you for coming today. We are going to do a work session first, and because we have, I want to say it's finals week, but you know, it feels like finals. We have people that need to go back and forth to committees, so we're going to do Senator Dondero Loop's bills first on work session. So if you please, do you want to? I think we're going to need you to come up because people have a couple questions on one of your bills. So, Madam Secretary, please call the roll. I almost forgot too.
Senator Buck, Senator Oñate, Senator Flores, Senator Hammond, Senator Neal, Senator Titus, Chair Lang.
Okay, so everyone has made sure that their cell phones are silenced. We've had a lot of time to think about this, so make sure those cell phones are silenced. And make sure if you want to speak today during the hearings later that you've signed in at the front desk, and make sure that you've left a card. And we'll go over all that when we get to it. But right now, I'm going to go to Ms. Sturm Gaynor to begin our work session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. Again, as nonpartisan staff, I can either support nor oppose any measure. The first bill on work session today is Senate Bill 340, presented by Senator Dondero Loop on April 3rd. The bill authorizes school districts and the State Public Charter School Authority to use any available resources to provide summer school, and requires these entities to submit a plan to provide in-person or virtual summer school to pupils in pre-kindergarten through grade 12 in 2023 and 2024. The bill also outlines requirements relating to the hiring and payment of summer school personnel. The bill requires school districts and the SPCSA to submit a report relating to the plan, and these reports will be compiled and submitted to various governmental entities. And there are no proposed amendments at this time. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion. Is it meant to pass?
It's due pass.
It's a due pass bill. Do I have a motion? From Senator Neal, do I have a second?
Second.
Senator Flores, seconds. Are there any questions? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, just comment. I appreciate the intent of this bill. Unfortunately, I think it adds an undue burden, especially in rural areas and charter schools that may not have the available transportation. I think there's options for summer school for any child who wants it with our online process. And so, unfortunately, I'll be a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Titus. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang. I am also a no due to the fact that of the timeline. We're not even out of session till June 6th, where a lot of the charter schools and district schools already have a plan for summer school, so it's neither innovative nor novel idea. This bill would also require charter schools to provide transportation, which with no funding to pay for facilities or transportation, that's a little difficult to do on top of staffing. That is already a challenge in most of our schools. Getting teachers who are already on burnout status to be able to come back to work all summer is a problem. And I'm just a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to do pass Senate Bill 340. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Motion carries. Senator Neal, or Senator Dondero Loop, will you carry this bill?
I will. Thank you very much. And just one clarification.
Sure.
There is $15 million sitting in an account for charter schools that has not been used for learning loss. So I just want to put that on the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't call on you earlier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next, Jen Sturm Gainer for the record. Senate Bill 425 is the next bill on work session. This bill was presented by Senator Loop on April 7th. The bill creates the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education to develop a statewide vision and implementation plan to improve Nevada's education system. The bill requires the commission to conduct a study comparing Nevada's education policies to those of high-performing education systems, make recommendations on how to adapt the policies of high-performing education systems to Nevada's system, make recommendations on improving student performance in Nevada to those of high-performing systems, incorporate any relevant findings of previous or ongoing studies related to education funding, and develop an implementation plan for recommendations made, including any costs, an analysis of costs involved. The bill appropriates funds for certain travel expenses and to allow the commission to enter into a contract with an organization to support the commission's work. And at this time, there are no proposed amendments. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I will now entertain a motion for Senate Bill 425.
So moved.
It's been moved by Senator Flores. Do I hear a second? A second by Senator Neal. Are there any questions or discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be a no on this also. Everybody at this table knows my opinion on commissions. I think we have a Board of Education. I think we have many departments that should be able to do this without yet another commission. And they need to be doing their jobs. So I will be a no on this. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, we asked legal if this would count as one of the boards or commissions that came out of the legislature, and I believe the answer is no, but Mr. Killian, would you respond to that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, no, this would not count against any limitation on the ability of the legislature and the NRM to operate its joint NRM standing committees and the studies that they perform.
Thank you so much. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Ling. Again, neither novel nor innovative. We've been doing this. I've been doing this for 30 years in education in Nevada, and there's always a new commission, new Singapore math. Let's look at math scores in other countries and see and bring that here. And so with good policy in our Department of Education, with superintendents, with principals that are seeking this, they do this anyway. And I wondered why this wasn't part of the many studies that were suggested in the interim by the interim committee. So again, I'll be a no.
Thank you, Senator Buck. Do you have anything to add? Okay, we'll take the vote. The motion on the floor is to do pass Senate Bill 425. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Motion carries. Senator Dondero Loop, will you take that as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gainer, Committee Policy Analyst. The next bill on work session is Senate Bill 442, sponsored by Senator Loop. The committee heard this bill on April 7th. The bill enacts the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, which establishes requirements for the issuance of a teacher license to an applicant who holds an equivalent license from another state that is also a member of the compact, and the sharing of files and information regarding the investigation and discipline of a teacher between member states. The bill requires the Commission on Professional Standards in Education to adopt regulations to carry out provisions contained in the compact and provide for the licensure pursuant to the compact. The bill exempts a person who obtains licensure pursuant to the compact from the examination required for initial licensing. The bill also exempts a person who applies for a license under this compact from submitting proof with the application that he or she has completed an approved course of study or training. And at this time, there are no proposed amendments. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion just to do pass Senate Bill 442.
So moved.
Senator Flores has made the motion. Do I have a second? Second is Senator Neal. Is there any discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've gone on record of not liking commissions. I sure as heck like compacts. I will be a yes on this bill. Thank you.
I love it. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang. Again, I'm, along with my colleague, I really like this bill. This is one I can definitely get behind. Thank you so much to the sponsor for bringing it forward. Anything to make it easier to attract talent to Nevada, that's what we want, especially great teaching talent. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Senator Dondero Loop, will you take this as well? Thank you, and thanks for making time to come over. Okay, next we'll go to Senator Wynn's bills. Oh, you know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gainer. The next bill on work session is Senate Bill 282, sponsored by Senator Wynn, and that bill was heard on April 5th. The bill clarifies that the hiring of staff by a principal of a local school precinct must conform to the applicable collective bargaining agreement. The bill also makes the principal of a local school precinct a voting member of the organizational team. There were several amendments proposed after the hearing, and those are found on Nellis, as well as in your meeting packets here. The full details are there. But in summary, the amendments, the first one would amend sections 2, 3, and 5 to provide clarity on the vote to approve the plan of operation, including notification requirements. The second amendment adds that the carry forward year-end balance amount of a school precinct that exceeds 2% of actual expenditures in the immediately preceding school year must be used on any of the following programs: tutoring or other supplemental academic achievement, social emotional learning, extracurricular programming for students, and instructional training program or activity designed and intended to improve pupil achievement. Third, the amendment adds that excess carry forward year-end balance funds not spent within 18 months be deposited into the education stabilization account. And finally, the amendment includes that these expended funds cannot supplant any duties, responsibilities, or funding owed. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will take a motion to amend and, oh, just a minute. I'll take a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, if we could, there was an additional request, and I had an opportunity to speak with the sponsor, and I would make the motion, but I'd like to first propose under section 8, sub 3, it was amended from 1 to 2, and I spoke with the sponsor about amending that to 5%. And the genesis of that conversation is, while I had an opportunity to speak at length with a lot of our teachers who were concerned about the money not being spent on children, period, and folk holding on to money, the concern is that on the other side, we're hoping to allow for principals to responsibly have some type of small cushion so that they can prepare for tomorrow and the scenario that we have to take care of tomorrow's kids as well. And while our teacher, my better said, my principals in my district didn't think 5 was even remotely close to where they needed it. They were requesting 10 and 15 and 12. I thought the compromise would make sense at 5 so that we can still have a responsible principal thinking fiscally conservatively in the scenario that we find ourselves, like what we've seen recently. And the other thing that I just want to put on the record is that, unfortunately, a lot of our principals, particularly those in my district, cannot fill the vacancies because, unfortunately, they just don't have the teachers there, and they have to have substitutes, even if they wish that was not the case. So I just wanted to get that on the record, Madam Chair, and I think the sponsor can speak more to it.
Thank you, Senator Wynn, and if you'll let us know if you'll accept that friendly amendment.
I would. Thank you. Rochelle Wynn. For the record, I did take into consideration a lot of the comments, most of the comments that were actually during the hearing, to alleviate that. In addition to extending it from 12 to 18 months, I also took into consideration some of the difficulties in getting SOT members to be present during those hearings. So it is 75% of the members that are present. I listened. I had some of the same concerns in my district, as there are a lot of schools that are carrying over some of these funds. And so I appreciate Senator Flores bringing that to my attention, and it is an acceptable amendment. So with the chair's permission, I see that as a friendly amendment. Additionally, I know that there were some concerns from Senator Neal and some others about the ability to spend that, and so they're also a part of the amendment that you've already seen uploaded, gives way more flexibility to those schools to spend that money.
Thank you. So we'll take a motion to amend and do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make the motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 282 with my proposed amendment to the already conceptual amendment of moving the 2% to 5%.
Okay, do I have a second? Second from Senator Neal. Any discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I'll be a no on this, but I do want to acknowledge all the communication I've had with my concerns and some folks from Clark County and why they thought this bill was a good bill. But again, unfortunately, I'm going to be a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang. So I've had several principals reach out to me in the days since the hearing, and which I realize 282, when you're taking away the staffing autonomy, but yet in 292, which I'm sure will be up in work session on Friday, we hold principals accountable. It's really hard when we have 282, 351, and now 148 coming up today, where you're holding principals responsible for things that sometimes are outside of their control when it comes to placing staff at their school. I cannot imagine being a business owner and running a school and not having choices in the selection of staff. And that is vital to running a business, to being a principal and leader, an inspiring leader in a school. Because you can just have one person come on campus that is not good for children or does not fit the instructional model. And then as a principal, you're spending your days having to try and coach and fix and then document. As far as the fiscal part of this, where there's carryover dollars, this was hit a nerve with a lot of principals because CCSD, and it hasn't changed much since I left about 19 years ago, but it's slower than molasses because of staffing issues and various things like purchasing to get things through and money spent. So I'll give you some examples. High school needs a press box. It's been 16 months. They were estimated $225,000. Now it's over $500,000. And the procurement and bid process took so long that the principal started since the principal started, it may not still be done. And so it's in procurement and we're waiting for it to get done. But unfortunately, that money's showing there and they want it done. Another one that may hit closer to home for some of you is the Bailey Middle School Health Center. And so 3 schools got together. They kind of pooled their money to put together this health center. It took 4 years to get this clinic up and running with their funds. And I just thought that was so thoughtful of administrators to, be looking out for the wraparound services and the whole needs of all their kids, as well as their academics. And then I know when I was a principal, I wanted to buy computers, and it took me 9 months to get computers. Finally, I had to go around and just go to Fry's, $1,000 here, $1,000 at Walmart, and just try and buck the system a little bit because it took 9 months. So school started, we got the donor dollars, and this was with donor dollars. We had the donor dollars in September. We finally got it toward the end of the school year. And I know that was a problem during the pandemic too, getting things and the needs met. With staffing issues, trying to get your school painted. Lisa Cano Burkhead was in my office yesterday, and she said that she tried to get her school painted. It was $125,000. So that would have been something that was procured, but just not able, there's no staff to do that, maybe. It takes a while, getting the long list. And maybe Clark County School District can tell me their wait times for schools. I know that principals who are busy right now and they're not able to be on the phone in opposition to these things. But I feel like I'm their voice as they're reaching out to me with their various concerns, and I just want that on record. I'm a no on this, with the right to reserve to be a yes at some point.
Thanks so much. Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to amend the amendment and do pass Senate Bill 282. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Storm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. Going back to the top of the work session here, Senate Bill 251. Next bill on work session, that one was sponsored by Senator Flores. The bill was heard on March 29th. Senate Bill 251 adds policies for the transfer and reassignment of school district employees who are not teachers to the mandatory scope of collective bargaining for a local government employer. Additionally, the bill provides that a large school district remains responsible for negotiating the policies for the transfer and reassignment of school district employees or during in response to a reduction in workforce. And at this time, there are no proposed amendments. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I would now entertain a motion to pass Senate Bill 251.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second from Senator Neal. Any discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although well-intended, fiscally irresponsible. So I will be a no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Buck.
Again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but the more you put regulations and mandates, it's great recruitment for autonomous charter schools because it takes away any autonomy of staffing. Thank you. I'm a no on this.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and I have no's from Senator Titus, Senator Hammond, and Senator Buck. Senator Flores, will you carry the floor statement?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Storm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. The next bill is Senate Bill 291, which was presented by Senator Cannizzaro on April 5th. The bill removes the requirement that, to qualify for employment as a substitute teacher, a student teacher must have completed at least 4 weeks of student teaching in a school district. Additionally, the bill makes an appropriation to Nevada's Department of Education for the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation and requires the institute to report on each expenditure from this money to the Interim Finance Committee. At this time, there are no proposed amendments. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I will entertain a motion to pass Senate Bill 291. It's been moved. Is there a second? Senator Buckle, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of voting Senate Bill 291 out of committee, say yes.
Aye. Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we'll give that to Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. The next bill on work session is Senate Bill 313, which was presented by Senator Lang on April 3rd. The bill revises provisions relating to mental health education. And jumping down here to the amendments, there are some amendments that were proposed for the committee's consideration. Those are attached to the work session document and available on Nellis. The first, proposed by Robert Barcel, includes amending subsection 4B of section 1 to instead read, quote, include without limitation the provision of information concerning mental health promotion, and culturally acceptable and age-appropriate mental health resources to pupils, unquote. Second, it would direct the Department of Education and the governing bodies of school districts, charter schools, and university schools for profoundly gifted pupils to adopt evidence-based mental health curriculum. Next, it clarifies that 2 credit hours of a course in mental health education is equal to 30 hours, and includes in subsection 2 of section 2 that in order to meet the mental health education course requirements, the training must be completed by a professional development model through an approved provider, including a school district, regional professional development program, or Nevada System of Higher Education institution. The second proposed amendment from Senator Lang is to clarify that related professional development provided to teachers and administrators are to be made available in rural districts, including through leveraging partnerships with NSHE and offering such training online. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I would now entertain a motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 313.
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second? Been seconded by Senator Neal. Any discussion? Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another well-intended bill that I'm going to be voting no on, because I think there was a couple questions I had that are not answered, and I think it may interfere with us getting teachers from out of state. Those questions were never answered on what would happen with somebody if there's a mandatory training, somebody's trying to come to the state of Nevada. I think the curriculum is suspect at best, and I will be a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Buck?
Thank you so much, Chair Lang. I'm a no today with the right to reserve my me changing on the floor. I just think anytime that we mandate things, and it's not mandate things for schools, it's a prescription when it may not even be needed. And so that's why I love optional. Because for some schools, yes, it may be needed for some grade levels, for some teachers, for some principals. It may be a viable thing that is absolutely needed, but optional would be the way to go. So I'm a no with the right to reserve my changing on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All those in favor of amending to pass Senate Bill 313, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed? Senator Titus, Senator Buck are no votes. I'll carry the statement for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. The next bill is Senate Bill 329, which is sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Education. We heard this bill on April 10th. The bill directs the Interim Committee on Education to appoint a committee to conduct an interim study concerning the budgeting process for and submission of required reports by Nevada's school districts. The study committee must report its findings and any recommendations for legislation to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Education by July 1, 2024. And there are no proposed amendments at this time.
Thank you so much. I will entertain a motion to pass Senate Bill 329.
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second? It's been seconded by Senator Donate. Any discussion? Senator Titus?
Can I just say ditto to previous comments about commissions? Thank you.
You may. Senator Buck?
Thank you, Chair Lang. Anyway, I'm a no on this, just due to, this should have been one of the studies that part of the 8 or 5, or I don't know what we just recently passed out of here a few weeks back. So I'm a no.
Thanks so much. Any further? Okay, all those in favor of passing Senate Bill 329 say yes. Yes. Opposed? Are you a nay? Okay, so I have 3 noes, Senator Hammond, Senator Buck, and Senator Titus. The motion passes. And Senator Neal, will you carry that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gainer. The next bill is Senate Bill 438, which was sponsored by Senator Lang, and we heard this bill on April 5th. The bill revises provisions relating to the recruitment, preparation, and retention of teachers and creates the Teach Nevada Collaborative in Nevada's Department of Education. Several amendments were proposed after the meeting, so I'll kind of summarize those here. The full details of that are outlined in the attached exhibit, available again on Nellis and in your meeting packets. Senator Lang and Dr. Kenneth Varner proposed the amendments here. These changes include defining the collaborative and university or college providers. 2, changing the term partner in Section 6 to community partner and defining community partner. Adding pre-service teachers to the bill and defining pre-service teacher to account for all students in all phases of the teacher preparation pipeline. 4, requiring Nevada's Department of Education, rather than the collaborative, to administer the Teach Nevada Collaborative account. 5, amending subsection 5 of Section 8 concerning allowable uses of money in the Teach Nevada Collaborative account. 6, amending and further addressing the various purposes of the collaborative and amending subsection 3 of Section 9 to provide for the amount of funds for certain programs supported by the collaborative. 7, requiring the Commission on Professional Standards in Education rather than the collaborative to adopt certain regulations. 8, requiring the department rather than the collaborative to develop and carry out a program of block grants, and adding to the priority of block grants applicants who recruit pupils, pre-service teachers, and community members from certain groups. 9, amending the annual targets for consideration when awarding block grants. 10, providing additional detail and clarity on the interaction between the Department of Education, members of the collaborative, and community partners in terms of executing the programming related to this funding and the accountability metrics. And finally, providing for several additional conforming changes. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 438.
So moved.
It's been moved. Do I have a second? Second from Senator Hammond. Any discussion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you for bringing this bill forward. Anything that we can do to promote the pipeline for much-needed education slots is a good idea, not just with our educators, but along a whole plethora of different professional areas that we need workers in and employers in. And bodies in. And so this is just one to help fulfill our teacher pipeline. And thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang, and I'm going to ditto my partner down there.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and I'll carry that to the floor. Thank you. Okay, I think that ends our work session. Thank you for your patience, and we'll move right into our bill hearings. Let me get my paper out. Okay, I'm going to hand the gavel over to my vice chair, and we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 148. You're up.
Madam Chair. Welcome to your committee, Madam Chair, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much, and it's so great to be in Senate Education. I am Roberta Lang. I represent Senate District 7 in Clark County, and I'm happy to present Senate Bill 148 along with a conceptual amendment. The bill makes changes to site-based school management and will establish staffing ratios for local school precincts when hiring school support staff. Presenting with me today is Randy Saltero, and in Las Vegas, Fred Horvath. I would like to just jump right into the provisions of the bill. Section 1 is removed by amendment. Section 2 of this bill prohibits the local school precincts from employing a person to provide services or carrying out any responsibility that has not been transferred to it by the county school district. And Vice Chair, if you'd allow me, I'd like to walk through the brief conceptual amendment. The amendment includes language to Section 2 that establishes provisions pertaining to staff ratios that a local school precinct must follow when hiring school support staff. For custodial employees, the local school precinct must employ a ratio of school custodial employees to the square footage as required by a Level 2 intensive cleaning standard as stated within the data of the Common Education Data Standards. With regards to campus security, the local school precinct must employ a ratio of 1.5 campus security monitors for every 500 pupils enrolled in the precinct. I would like to place an emphasis on this section here. We've had many discussions about staff ratios this session when talking with doctors, nurses, teachers, and certain other school-based personnel, including school counselors, psychologists, social workers, but we haven't addressed the need to ensure that these additional school support staff, custodial employees, and campus security monitors are also receiving the attention they deserve. Enforcing these ratios will make sure our local school precincts have the necessary number of support staff to ensure students are provided a clean and safe environment for learning. In addition, this amendment requires that the principal of the local school precinct to select employees for that precinct in accordance with the applicable collective bargaining agreements. It also requires superintendent make any decision regarding assignment or reassignment of certain staff to first consult with the principal of the local school precinct and the school associate superintendent. And lastly, the conceptual amendment deletes Section 3 of the bill concerning the transfer of certain funds. I would like to turn it over to Randy Saltero, who will talk about the amendment to the amendment that we just received before we came in here, and then he'll go over any other pertinent information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Randy Saltero, representing the Education Support Employees Association, today here on SB 148. We spoke with Clark County School District prior to the beginning of this hearing in discussion with Senator Lang and the other stakeholders. We have talked about emphasizing that when in hiring these persons, there could be an occasion where there is no available resources in the school or in the pool of the available workers, and not want to be able to hold then principals or superintendent responsible or liable for breaking the law if that's the case. But when those persons are available, then those staffing requirements should be met. That is would be a conceptual amendment on the conceptual amendment. I ask that you support that as well with this bill. And Mr. Horvath is here representing Teamsters 14. He is down in Las Vegas, and myself here to answer any questions on the bill.
Would you like for us to go to Las Vegas, or are they just ready for us in terms of technical questions?
Chair, you can go ahead and we're open for questions, and they're available to answer any you might have.
Sounds good, Chair. With that, members will open it up for questions for Senate Bill 148. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it out loud. So this looks like a perfect example of how to use carryover dollars. Because when we think about the collective bargaining, and I like the fact that you want to have the ratios, but we need to make sure that the schools can pay for the increased staffing. So if we do the CBA, right, are they expected to get that extra allocation from central or from their own budget, school precinct budget?
So, Senator Neal, I'm not sure. They could use it from carryover dollars. They could get it from the school district. They could get it for their operating expenses that they're allocated in their budget for the year. I think when you look at schools, they have options on how they want to spend their budget dollars. They certainly know how many teachers they need to hire to meet their quotas within their district. This is another example of adding something in there that they would have to allocate money in their budget in a yearly basis.
Thank you for that. So, I mean, there might need to be another amendment to make sure that the carryover dollars can actually be applied to this, being that we just reduced the amount that they can hold on to, and then we just said, just prior to that, what they could spend it on, because the ratio would need to be contemplated in their budget, not after the fact. So,
You have any input to that or not? On whether or not? I don't want to put you on. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I put you on the spot by stopping the meeting and asking you a question that everybody could hear. We'll defer to legal. If there's any answers we could provide now or later to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So it's a complicated question. Generally, the carryover dollars that are available to the local school precincts in a large school district could be used on anything the principal of the large school precinct wants to use them on. If the principal of the large school precinct wanted to use those dollars for one of these purposes, the principal would be able to, since there are no restrictions on the principal's ability other than the plan of operation for the local school precinct agreed to for each year. But I believe the way that the amendment is structured, this isn't a requirement for the principal to hire these people, but rather a requirement for the principal to select from the pool of personnel made available from the school district to the local school precincts. So this amendment wouldn't be imposing any liability on the principal to go out and hire new people. It would be the staff that the principal is selecting from the pool of personnel already available to the county school district.
Follow up, please.
thank you for that. I always want to call you Asher. But if they don't have enough people, then you will hire, right? Because there might not be enough to meet the ratio.
Senator Neal, Roberta Lang for the record, Senate District 7. Yes, if they didn't have enough people to meet the ratio, they're going to have to hire somebody.
Okay, thank you for that.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Buck, please.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Flores. This is like a rinse and repeat. 351, 282, 148 is basically the same thing. There are not enough staff in the pool. So I'd like to know from Clark County School District, if they're in the audience, do you have a pool of campus security monitors that you're not letting the principals know about? Because there's vacancies in those positions. So to move to a 1.5 ratio, why not just start with 1 per school as opposed to a ratio of 1 per 500? Because some of our schools would have then 8 security monitors, of which I'm sure that over half of them would be vacant because of the vacancy rates. If we were to move to this ratio.
Patricia Hatta, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. I do not have that information in front of me at this moment, but I can find out more about who all we have in the pool. It's not my understanding that we have an excess of campus security monitors, but we'll certainly find that out for you. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Senator Titus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. My question was along the ratio of employees, and you mentioned the cleaning employees and those kind of things. And I know that this bill pertains to large school districts, but I'll tell you, it's been hugely difficult to find appropriate staff throughout the state, not just in Clark County. And so I worry about putting something a mandatory staff ratio. And my question is, would this prohibit, say you can't find somebody to do the cleaning, hiring an outside firm, a cleaning agency to come in and clean your school? Can you do any of those kind of things, or do they have to actually be employed by the school?
For the record, Randy Saltero, I would ask Mr. Horvath if you'd like to address that question.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, we can.
We actually participated in an exercise in the Mesquite.
Sir, if I could just have you state your name for
schools,
the record,
regions
please.
Around outsourcing, and with Mr. Gowdy's involvement, they were allocated the amount of dollars that they would have been allocated for staff, and found that they could not outsource it for the price that they would, the dollars they receive for staff.
And so the reality is that you're going to perhaps put in law a ratio that then perhaps you can't even fill. So I have some concerns about mandating numbers. Thank you.
And I don't know if you wanted to respond to that in Las Vegas. You don't have to, but I saw you reaching for your microphone.
Just a general comment, if I could. We are working.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. If I could just have you state your name for the record.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Fred Horvath. I am the principal officer of Teamsters Local 14, and with our partners at the Education Support Employee Association, we're working as recently as yesterday to fix the root cause of staffing vacancies in both custodian and campus security monitors. And it's a combination of recruitment and retention and compensation. And it's been a significant focal point of the superintendent and his staff and us for the last 6 months. And we believe we're getting very, very close to making a fundamental change so that we can fill those vacancies.
Follow up, Mr. Vice Chair?
Please.
So would you explain to me what a campus security monitor is? I'm not sure I have them in my little school of Smith Valley. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Jason Gately with Teamsters Local 14. A campus security monitor is an individual that is utilized to break up fights in the schools, to make sure that it is safe for all students and teachers and staff. That's their primary function.
Thank you for that. So having grandkids in Clark County that was beaten up, I just worry, are they in every school? And I know this is probably off topic, but I'm concerned that if they exist, does every school have a security monitor that can break up fights?
So, my name is Jason Gately, Teamsters Local 14. Does every school have one? No. Are there a lot of vacancies in this area? Yes. And as to repeat what my brother Fred Horvath had stated, is that we're working with CCSD on negotiating a new agreement to raise the standards. But one of the things is that to have a safe school, we think that given the environment in our country today, it is important to have ratios that are guidelines for people to go by so that they understand that their schools are safe, so that there is somebody there that if something breaks out, they can break it up.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Senator Buck, follow up?
So you had mentioned the safety in schools, and I know that they're unarmed, right?
This is correct.
Okay.
And with that, I don't believe we have any additional questions, although we may have some for other folk as they're coming up in support, opposition, or neutral. I'd like to invite both of you to please sit back. And at this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 148. As always, we will be limiting everyone's testimony to 2 minutes. Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Dawn Echeverry. I'm the president of the Nevada State Education Association. NSCA supports SB 148 as amended to prohibit outsourcing, ensure staffing ratios for custodial and campus security employees, and to ensure clarity and fairness during selection of employees in the Clark County School District. Educational support professionals are the backbone of CCSD, keeping schools running while ensuring students are safe, healthy, and ready to learn. While critical to the operation of schools, education support professionals tend to be at the bottom of the district pay scale. Some ESPs make as little as $12 an hour, and an overwhelming majority make less than a living wage. Last year, over 1,600 CCSD workers, mostly ESPs, were enrolled in Medicaid. Education support professionals reflect the Nevada communities they serve, and a majority are people of color. The reorganization of Clark County School District aimed to decentralize decision-making, giving local schools precincts more autonomy over school budgets and operations. However, this overhaul came with unintended consequences that negatively impacted many education support professionals. This decentralization created perverse incentives for local school precincts to consider outsourcing and understaffing positions critical for health and safety. SB 148 addresses this by setting minimal staff ratios for custodial and campus security employees. Similar to SB 251, language in SB 148 affirms language in collective bargaining agreements regarding the selection of staff in the employee surplus process. For too long, education support professionals have felt relegated among staff employees. The CCSD reorganization has made this worse. SB 114 is a big step towards giving the ESPs the respect they deserve.
That was exactly 2 minutes. Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Abel, Government Affairs for the LVPPA, the union that represents LV and PD officers, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Please.
Hello again, Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for the Clark County School District. Just want to share our appreciation for Senator Lang and her co-presenters. We find these amendments that were made acceptable and are grateful for them taking on the suggestion that we provided as well. So we're in support. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please.
Good afternoon, co-chair, members of the committee. My name is Fran Alvarez, and I'm here today in support of this bill. As a grandparent with children in school, the atmosphere of fear that the children have now, we need more ratio of people there to help protect them. And I urge you to pass this bill, please.
And thank you for joining us. Is there anybody else in Carson City? Seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolina Ospina. I am a Teamster representative. I represent the custodians at the district. I support the bill SB 148 in close communication with a group of workers, and these workers are really proud of what they do. They maintain the school clean and sanitized every single day. So I support the bill.
And thank you for joining us. Is there anybody else in Las Vegas? Seeing none, BPS will go to the phone. Those wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 148.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of SB 148, press star 9 to take your place in the queue now. Caller, last 3 digits. You're unmuted.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Jan Giles, and I'm the president of the Education Support Employees Association, ESEA. We represent the campus security monitors that work for CCSD schools. This new language will add much-needed safety to all our schools to protect students and staff. Due to the current climate, security should be a priority. We know that elementary schools are not immune to violence, yet currently very few have a campus security monitor. Only high schools and middle schools currently have a budget for campus security monitors. Elementary schools do not. yet we know that they are not immune to the same safety issues. This will allow for all schools to have at least one minimum campus security monitor per school. This language will also add additional employees to provide a clean learning environment for our students. Currently, the square footage these employees are required to clean is unattainable. This will help prevent employee burnout and will allow for coverage for employee absences. We ask that you support SB 148 as amended. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. BPS, next caller in support of Senate Bill 148.
One moment, Chair.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Anderson, and I'm ESEA's Secretary Treasurer, and I support SB 148. We need to focus on our safety and a clean learning environment for our students. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Senate Bill 148.
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in support of SB 148, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Anna Binder, ANNABINDER, and I just wanted to call in support of Senate Bill. What are we on? 148. Right? Are we on 148? I don't know. Whatever. We do need campus monitors. We cannot continue to rely on volunteers from the community. And I think we're all in agreement that we need to prioritize the safety of everyone while on campuses, and what a better way to do that than free up teaching staff's time from being hall monitors. Thank you.
And fortunately, we were on Senate Bill 148, so that was perfect. Perfect timing. Next caller in support of Senate Bill 148.
Caller, last 3 digits 402. Press star 6 to unmute yourself, please. You're unmuted.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Schuman, TerriShuman, and I am speaking for the amendment on SB 148. As a support professional myself, I see outsourcing as just another way of surplusing one individual doing a job and replacing them with another, with one very important difference. This difference being that the support professional who holds the position has gone through fingerprinting, has gone through background checks, while outsourcing does not have this guarantee. School safety is of utmost concern today, and therefore we must make sure that if this bill passes, that they can go through the same background checks as every other CCSD employee has done. Please make sure that our schools stay safe. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller in support of Senate Bill 148.
Caller, last 3 digits 495. Press star 6 to unmute yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Misty Olmos. I am the ESCA Paraprofessional Director. I fully support SB 148. Our students deserve a safe and clean learning environment. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, are you still there? I think we missed her. I think it was very difficult for all of us to decipher exactly what was said. Ma'am, if you want to call back, if you're still listening, just know that unfortunately it was very difficult on our end to get your remarks and your name. If you want to call back so we can get the record clear on that. We'll go to the next caller in support of Senate Bill 148.
Caller, press star 6 to unmute yourself, please. One moment, Chair. Sorry, Chair, we're having too much difficulty. We're gonna have to move on. There seems to be no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Just for the sake of clarity, we will then stay on the line and invite those wishing to call in opposition to Senate Bill 148.
To testify in opposition of SB 148, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. There are no callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have anybody in Las Vegas or Carson City wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 148? I see someone making their way forward in Las Vegas. We'll start in Carson City and then we'll go back to Las Vegas. Please.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang, Vice Chair Flores, and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Jeff Horn, and I am the Executive Director of the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional Technical Employees, representing over 1,400 CCSD administrators, of which nearly 98% are members. I appreciate the conversations that I have had with Senator Lang regarding SB 148, but unfortunately, CASAPI is opposed to the current language. SB 148, similar to multiple bills that have been heard this session, will allow the forced placement of staff without the approval or consent of the building principal. The reality is the overwhelming majority of staff who are surplus are hardworking, effective employees. We are concerned with the handful of staff that potentially will negatively impact our most precious resource, our students. CASAPI is the only bargaining unit who has changed their collective bargaining agreement to protect kids, not adults, in alignment with AB 469 from 2017. Also, SB 148 will not allow a principal, after consultation from the school organizational team, to hire a district-approved licensed vendor or contractor from outside the district to perform building maintenance, repair, or upgrades. Schools are currently waiting 6 months, a year, 18 months, and more to have these needed repairs and projects completed. This district simply does not have the staffing to keep up with the demand. CASAPI is asking for SB 148 to be amended to allow for principals to hire vendors, contractors who have been approved and vetted by the district to perform and complete needed repairs and upgrades to our schools. We also ask that we finally allow principals the autonomy to hire the best possible staff for schools that directly impact student outcomes. In closing, I want to say, as a former principal, I know how hard custodians and our campus security monitors work. They're overworked and they're underpaid. And as long as it's a funded mandate for schools for those ratios, we support that part of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please.
Hello, Will Bradley, live in Las Vegas. I'm on the board of the Nevada Republican Club and here on their behalf. We rise in opposition to this bill. Anytime we subvert the elective process, and let's keep in mind, in CCSD, we did have a competitive election this time where some incumbents lost. Not hoping that for any of you necessarily, but it's good when incumbents lose. It means when people were paying attention. People were paying attention in Clark County School District because some lost, that means they're being held accountable. If we're going to trust our elections and our democracy and our school boards, which we need to, stop trying to subvert their power. And I see this as a subversion of the power of Clark County School Board. And for better or for worse, that system has got to work where they make decisions like this for their school district, not a state entity. I leave you with the quote of the day, and it's by a food critic of all people, Mimi Sheraton. Even the best of ideas carried to extremes can deteriorate into absurdity. So please don't subvert local government. And I'll go on the record, and some of my Republican colleagues will probably hate me for this. I'm against breaking up CCSD. I am. We have to make the system we have work and allow it to work and allow the people that are watching our elected representatives to fire them if they don't work for them. And that includes Clark County School District, Board of Trustees, and all Board of Trustees across this state. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, sir. Please.
Good afternoon. Chairman Flores, co-chair. Apologize. Members of the committee, AJ Delap on behalf of Nevada Association of School Administrators. We also are in opposition to this measure. NASA would like to see the authority and the autonomy to remain predominantly in the principal's hands to make the best decisions they can for their school, which they're charged for overseeing. And with that, I'll close my testimony. Thank you, sir.
And thank you for joining us. Anybody else in Carson City? Seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas.
Good afternoon. This is Susan Prophet. I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. And I'm just going to have to say ditto to a number of the other testimonies. This bill appears to be taking the power away from the people and in the local communities. And that is something we should always avoid, because making the government larger does not make it better. And also, I believe I heard something about these outsourced security people not being armed. Well, if you can't arm them, what good are they going to be? All right? So I really think we need to go back to the drawing board, address this issue, but in a different manner. And I do believe in splitting up the school district, because we need to give the power back to all the people, not just one group. And we seem to have one group making all the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 148? We have gone to the phones, and there's nobody else in Carson City or Las Vegas. Next, we'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Senate Bill 148, Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, BPS, do we have anybody wishing to join us in the neutral position for Senate Bill 148?
To testify neutral to SB 148, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hi, I apologize. My hand was raised for opposition, but for some reason it didn't show on your end. Can I please testify for opposition?
Yes, please identify yourself for the record, and yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Katrin Ivanov, aka Mrs. Fixit. I'm from Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. And I'm testifying in opposition for this bill.
Ma'am, we're gonna restart your time. Ma'am, we're gonna restart your time. If I could just have you spell your name one more time, please.
Okay. Katrin Ivanov, I-V-A-N-O, Frank, aka Mrs. Fixit, Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. I'm testifying in opposition of this bill. I'll just say ditto to all the opposition before me. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Now we'll go back to those wishing to testify in the neutral position. BPS, please.
There are no more callers wishing to testify neutral at this time.
All right, Madam Chair, any closing remarks we may have?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just have a couple, Roberta Lang for the record. I just want to address a couple comments that were brought up in the opposition. We're not talking about surplusing. We aren't even dealing in the surplus world. That part was deleted from the bill. So that's something that we don't have to worry about. We're also talking about the collective bargaining agreement, and these positions are within the collective bargaining agreement already. We want to ensure that they remain within the collective bargaining agreement. And there's nothing better than a clean school for our children, to have a good environment to learn in, and to have a safe school where our kids can feel safe and their parents can feel safe every day when they're at school. So with that, I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, we'll close out the hearing on Senate Bill 148.
Well, Senator Gokachia, we welcome you to Senate Education and ask you to present your bill on 342 when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senator Pete Goycochea, representing Senate District 19, and I'm bringing you Senate Bill 342 today. I have with me at the table Patty Porter. She's with WICHE. She's going to be in the neutral position, only here to answer any questions as we get into the bill and the WICHE parts of it. Also on my right, I have Mike Taglis, a professor from UNR, and Mike and I, over the last decade or more, have sat on the WICHE Vet Med Advisory Board, and we have been struggling over the years trying to figure out how we fill this need, especially it started predominantly with food animal vets in Nevada and the real shorties. But as we've come full circle, and now, especially with the pandemic and the companion animals, we now, and I know Mr. Taglis can speak to that, he's done the research on it, the true shortage we have in veterinarians in the state of Nevada. Again, because we were involved in the 7-state region with WICHE and the Vet Med, we've been engaged with some conversations with Utah State University over the years, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. And as of this spring, the Utah State Legislature funded a Vet Med program for USU. They've been running on a 2+2 with Washington, and over the years, even one with, they were in the WUI, which was Washington, Idaho, Oregon. Everybody's struggling to find a vet school. And as we talk about it, we do have WICHE. But unfortunately, with WICHE, you might be WICHE funded, but you've still got to find a vet school, a grad school to get into. And so in our conversations this spring with the funding of Utah State University's new vet school in Logan, they came to us, Kerry Rod, Ken White, and Dirk Vanderwilt, and anyway, and they approached us and said, hey, you know, we could use a little more money for our vet school, and we'll contract with you for 100 positions over the next 10 years. And so we looked into it, met with WICHE, Fred Loken, and it seems reasonable. I realize this bill, this is the policy side of it. We need to go to finance and see if we can get the $8 million price tag that's in the bill. You know, their price ran from $8 million to $13 million if we wanted 100 graduate slots. Sometimes a slow dance is a better dance if it's a short dance. And so let's move into it and in the short 70 students, and that will bring us 70 vets back to Nevada if over the next 10 years, if this is improved. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Taglis, and he can give you some more as far as, and again, I want to make sure you understand, this is not focused with just, even though Mike's from UNR, if you meet the prerequisites, and in the bill it talks about the selection committee, which will be WICHE plus 2 veterinarians that will sit on that board, the selection, if you've got the prerequisites, you can access this, meet with this committee, and we hope we can get these people funded at a rate of 10 slots a year, and maybe we can recover. You know, I look at the vets we've had come out of this state. Some of them are really great. Bill Barton, raised on the Diamond Days, Idaho State vet. Peter Rolfe, the deputy in Colorado. We've just got Nick Kilifatic up there, Idaho Equine. He's board-certified surgeon there. You know, these are Wyatt Winchell down in Vegas. They're great vets. Unfortunately, they're 50 years old and older. There's nobody coming behind them. So that's what this bill's intended to address, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Taglis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is, for the record, my name is Mike Teglis, Teglas. I'm a veterinarian and a professor at the Department of Agriculture, Veterinary, and Rangeland Sciences at the University of Nevada, Reno. Part of my responsibilities there include teaching and advising undergraduate students interested in careers in veterinary medicine. I also currently serve as the Nevada WICHE Veterinary Medicine PSEP representative along with Senator Goycochea. As some of you may know, Nevada does not have a veterinary school of its own. Our Nevadans are forced to, the one to become veterinarians must go out of state to obtain their educations elsewhere, and as a result pay a much, much higher amount of tuition than students from states with veterinary schools. These bright people can go anywhere they want to practice veterinary medicine, so how do we get them to come back home here to Nevada? SB 342 seeks to provide funding to train a workforce of up to 70 new veterinarians to meet the statewide shortage of animal health care professionals in both rural and urban areas of the state. Nevada WICHE can enter into a contract with Utah State University as they plan to open their new four-year College of Veterinary Medicine on Logan campus. Nevada and the entire nation are experiencing a veterinary shortage that's been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The widely publicized March Veterinary Health Report estimates an additional 41,000 veterinarians nationwide are required to meet the companion animal health care needs by 2030. Food animal producers here in Nevada are also limited in their need for veterinarians to help them keep their herds healthy and to perform necessary regulatory duties. Currently 10 counties in our state have been identified by the USDA as having a critical shortage of food animal and rural veterinarians. The 2022 Workforce Blueprint for Southern Nevada ranks veterinarians 5th in terms of workforce needs, and as Senator Goycochea has indicated, about a third of Nevada's veterinarians are baby boomers and are set to retire in a short period of time. Currently, incentives to draw the new graduates back to Nevada to replace positions vacated by these retirements are not in place. The Veterinary Medical Association estimates that recent veterinary school graduates have an average educational debt of nearly $200,000. Educational debt for veterinarians has grown 4 times faster than their income, and women in the profession graduate with a higher debt-to-income ratio on average than men. Through SB 342, the state can provide funding for the tuition differential, and this is the difference between the in-state tuition and the out-of-state tuition costs for Nevadans admitted to the program. In return, individuals receiving support will enter into a contract to come back to Nevada and work as veterinarians. The USU College of Veterinary Medicine plans to use what's called a distributed teaching model to provide clinical training for their veterinary students. And so this means that food animal, equine, companion animal practices throughout the state and industry as well in Nevada will be offered the opportunity to serve as teaching hospitals for veterinary students during their senior year clinical rotations. The students that go through this program will gain experiences and build relationships across Nevada that may influence them to stay in underserved regions of our state. Veterinary hospitals participating as teaching facilities will also have access to a source of new employees to recruit from. Finally, I do want to point out that women constitute a very important component of the veterinary medical profession. According to the AVMA, women are projected to own the majority of veterinary practices within the next decade. 63% of the nation's veterinary workforce are female, marking a 12% increase over the previous decade. And so veterinarians really do help to diversify the workforce across the entire state of Nevada. I urge the members of the Senate Committee on Education to support SB 342 and veterinary medical education for the next generations in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't believe Patty has any prepared comments, but we would stand for questions and then some support testimony.
Thank you so much. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll ask you to step back and we'll take comments from the public. If you're here to speak in favor of this bill, please step to the podium or to the table, I'm sorry. And in Las Vegas, if there's anyone wishing to speak in favor, and we'll start in Carson City. When you're ready, please.
For the record, Madam Chair, Danny Thompson, today representing the Nevada Veterinary Medical Association. We want to thank Senator Goycochea for bringing this bill forward. I think everyone knows there is a shortage of veterinarians in Nevada, but particularly in rural Nevada, and we see this bill as a solution to that problem that everyone is experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and committee members. My name is Rebecca Goff, and I'm the Nevada State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. On behalf of our Nevada members and the Humane Society Veterinary Medical Association, I'm here today in strong support of SB 342. Before I had this role, I spent most of my adult life working in veterinary medicine, the last 10 years right here in Nevada. I can tell you firsthand that one of the biggest crises facing pets in this state is a lack of access to veterinary care, partially driven by the historic staffing crisis the industry is facing. There are simply not enough vets to see all the pets in our urban areas, and many of our rural communities there are no vets at all. This problem is compounded by the well-documented mental health crisis the veterinary community faces, which only got worse during the pandemic. National statistics from the CDC show that one of every 6 veterinarians has considered suicide, with vets about 2.4 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population. Compassion fatigue and burnout have led many vets that I have personally worked with over the years to leave practicing medicine or the industry altogether. Adding to the mental health crisis is the extreme financial burden of attending vet school. If you're lucky enough to get into and graduate from one of the only 32 vet schools in this country, the average student leaves with about $200,000 in debt, not including undergrad debt. Since Nevada has no vet school yet, Nevadans are forced to attend out-of-state schools and pay even higher out-of-state tuition. Vets can often expect to be paying off this debt for their entire career, and this impacts their decision whether to practice in rural areas or shelters or nonprofits, where the income levels might be lower. By expanding the availability to provide financial assistance to Nevada veterinarians and future vets, SB 342 would help address the veterinary crisis, support veterinary professionals, and provide better access to veterinary care to Nevada families in need. We urge your strong support of this important legislation, and we thank the sponsor for bringing this issue forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sandrina Duhamel, Cendrina Duhamel, and I am currently an undergraduate student at the University of Nevada, Reno. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Nevada State Legislature and fellow citizens, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today on an issue that is both close to my heart and of great importance to the future of our state. I stand before you to discuss the necessity of providing in-state tuition for Nevada veterinary students attending Utah State's University School of Veterinary Medicine. As you may know, Nevada does not currently have a veterinary school of its own. Our aspiring veterinarians must travel out of state to pursue their career goals, with many choosing the School of Veterinary Medicine at USU. However, these students face a significant financial burden due to the higher costs associated with out-of-state tuition, which can nearly double the cost for Nevada students. In fact, according to the American Veterinary Medical Association, the average debt for veterinary students in 2020 was $183,000 and $302, with out-of-state students carrying often even higher debt burdens. Furthermore, a survey conducted by the Nevada Veterinary Medical Association found that nearly 70% of respondents indicated that the high cost of out-of-state tuition was a major barrier to pursuing veterinary education. Our state's growing population and expanding agricultural sector demand a strong veterinary workforce to ensure the health and welfare of our animals, as well as the safety of our food supply. It is important to recognize that these students, upon completing their education, will return to Nevada and provide essential veterinary services to areas most in need, as described by the USDA's Veterinary Services Shortage Situations Map. By offering in-state tuition for Nevada students attending Utah State's University School of Veterinary Medicine, we can alleviate this financial burden and open the door for a greater number of passionate and dedicated individuals to enter this critical field. Supporting their education and reducing their student loan debt, we will be fostering the growth of a skilled workforce that is dedicated to giving back to the community. By investing in the education of our future veterinarians, we are directly investing in the future of our great state. Please support SB 342. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Alejandro Rodriguez, Director of Government Relations for Nevada System of Higher Education, and she is in strong support of SB 342. We'd like to thank Senator Goycochea for bringing this measure forward, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next person.
Good afternoon, Sheila Bray, spelled Sheila Bray with University of Nevada, Reno. Thank you for bringing forth this bill to Senator Goycochea. As the bill sponsor and Dr. Teklis noted, there's a grave need for veterinarians in rural and urban areas for both large, small, and our domestic animals throughout our state. This bill aims to provide a unique opportunity for Nevada to address this industry shortage, support our students along the way that have a grave passion for this work, and offers it statewide as well. So this is a really truly good opportunity. We support this and we encourage you to as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next person.
For the record, my name is Deanna Brito. I am a graduate student at the University of Nevada, Reno, pursuing a master's and I'm in the process of applying to veterinary school. I am here in support of SB 342 that would support veterinary students in the state of Nevada to attend professional school at Utah State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. Tuition costs for an out-of-state resident is almost double the amount than that of a in-state resident. The passing of this bill would allocate a quantity annually for 10 Nevada residents to attend school with an in-state tuition in return for a 4-year contract of practicing as a doctor of veterinary medicine in the state of Nevada. After the pandemic, there has been an increased demand for veterinarians and veterinary professionals in which there is a great lack thereof. Getting accepted into veterinary school is difficult as it is, and paying back student loans is even more difficult. This bill would support the veterinary field and provide an additional 70 veterinarians in the state of Nevada to meet demands of food animal, equine, and companion animal private practices and hospitals. As spoken about previously, suicide rates within the veterinary field are large. Burnout and fatigue are real detrimental issues to our state demands for adequate veterinary care, and this bill will support the state of Nevada and animals.
Thanks so much. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Hosking, for the record, STACY-HOSKING, and I am here on behalf of the Nevada State Veterinary Medical Board of Examiners, as well as personally, I'm a Nevada veterinarian. I'm here to express my enthusiastic support for SB 342 today. As you may have already heard, there's a shortage of veterinary professionals, and that's been a growing concern in the recent years, with reports and personal experiences indicating difficulties in getting timely appointments with veterinarians. In March 2022, Mars Veterinary Health conducted a survey to quantify the severity of this shortage for companion animal veterinarians, technicians, and specialists. With pet ownership on the rise, the issue is only expected to worsen unless we take action. This study found that nationwide we will need almost 41,000 additional veterinarians to meet the need of companion animal health care by 2030. And even with the expected new veterinary graduates over the next 10 years, we still expect to see a shortage of almost 15,000 veterinarians still existing by 2030. Meeting the 10-year industry need for credentialed veterinary technicians would require more than 30 years worth of graduates. It's important to note that while this Mars study did not evaluate the large animal or equine veterinary workforce, I can assure you that the same issues are present there as well. As someone who has personally benefited from state assistance toward veterinary school costs, I know the value of programs like the State of Nevada WICHE program. I received a stipend from the State of Nevada WICHE program toward my out-of-state tuition costs for all 4 years of veterinary school at Ohio State. Growing up in an underprivileged household in Sparks, I would not have been able to attend veterinary school, much less become a board-certified veterinary cardiologist, without the support of the State of Nevada through the WICHE program. Thank you for your time and consideration of this bill.
Thanks so much. Please go ahead.
Kent Irvin, ERVIN, Nevada Faculty Alliance. This is a great opportunity for our students until we get our own veterinary school in Nevada. And although I'm sure you'll hear details over in the fiscal committee, just from a policy point of view, this has got to be a cost-effective way of doing it temporarily compared to standing up a new vet school. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, in Las Vegas, go ahead.
Hi there, this is Susan Proffitt, and I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. And, you spell my name, Proffitt. I would like to say thank you very much for a bipartisan bill that you all are working very hard on. And I want to suggest that you take it one step further. We are 49th in ratings for doctors. We're 2,000 short, not just in the veterinary, but in the whole of Nevada. And if they pass Medicare for all, we are going to implode. So I would suggest that y'all think about giving them this kind of incentive to come and after being educated or getting their tuition paid for, but put a heftier exit clause on that in case they want to leave before before they've given the state enough services to cover the cost of their education. And I really think we ought to consider doing that in the medical school as well, because, well, when I was recruiting for my company before retiring, I had to give people at least a 75% raise in order to get them to move east to west, all right, to California. At that time, Las Vegas was about 20% less. But now I think we're pretty much on par with California trying to get people to move here because of our lack of infrastructure. So please keep on working on this, tweak it, make it better.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Al Rojas. I live down here in southern Nevada, Assembly District 12, Senate District 21. I am in support of this bill just because education is important and it contributes to a growing economy and a growing city. Many of you know that I came from the Orange County area. I spent my whole adult life there, 35 years. When I was 18, I graduated high school, and I had the choice to go anywhere in the country to study engineering. I went to UC Irvine. Now, Irvine was a planned community, and it had that university that was there since crime was low. Education grew and people stayed there. I see a lot of parallels between Las Vegas and Irvine. We have a great university here, the University of Las Vegas. And we have a high-tech industry in terms of we're the #1 entertainment capital of the world. The difference that you guys, the reason why you're losing so many of your graduate and so many of your valuable resources, which are your educated people, is that crime is too high. We have the highest, we have our per capita homeless rate is above Oakland and San Francisco. And I really do believe if we don't address that as Nevadans of getting the homeless rate down, addressing that problem and getting the proper housing and mental institution and creating stricter laws like in Irvine that you can't sleep on the street, you can't sleep on the sidewalk, and you can't have your car sleep overnight on the streets. Those are restricted laws, and it keeps the homelessness problem under control, and that's how that whole Orange County area thrived. And if, for those of you who know, Disneyland was like an isolated spot for many years.
Mr.
And now it
Rojas?
isn't. So I get my point. Go ahead.
If you could just wrap it up, because your time is up.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying that I support the bill. Let's not forget that crime is also an issue. And let's try to keep that under control to keep our students. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. BPS, if we could go to the phone lines. We're in support.
In support of SB. Okay. To testify in support of SB 342, press *9 to take your place in the queue. Caller, last 3 digits 438. Press *6 to unmute yourself, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Dirk Vanderwall. I'm a veterinarian and currently serve as the interim dean for the College of Veterinary Medicine at Utah State University in Logan, Utah. As you heard from Senator Goycochea, we currently train veterinary students in partnership with Washington State University through the Washington, Idaho, Montana, Utah or WEMU Regional Program in Veterinary Medicine. As a partner in the WEMU program, we train 30 veterinary students in each class cohort. We have had 16 Nevada residents receive their DVM degrees through the USU WEMU program. However, as you heard stated earlier, in our current program, all of those Nevada students have paid non-resident tuition all 4 years of their education program, which contributes to a significant debt load for them. Importantly, therefore, Senate Bill 342 would decrease the cost of obtaining a veterinary education for Nevada residents by approximately 50% through the state support of the difference between resident and non-resident tuition. Last year, the Utah Legislature approved funding to establish a full four-year College of Veterinary Medicine at USU. Formation of the new college will allow us to increase our class size to 80 students, which will be done incrementally in conjunction with the construction of a new veterinary medical education building on the USU campus. Clinical instruction, as you heard from Dr. Teglis, during the fourth year will be conducted using a community-based private practice or distributed model in which we will immerse our students in day-to-day clinical activities that are routinely performed in private practice. To that end, a network of host practices will be developed throughout the Intermountain West, including Nevada. We are excited with the tremendous potential for this method of clinical instruction to match students with future employers through the immersive on-site experience they will have at each clinical location. In closing, given the tremendous need for veterinarians in our respective states, we are excited with the prospect of partnering with Nevada to increase opportunities for your residents, some of whom we've heard from this afternoon, to pursue their dream of becoming a veterinarian to help meet the need for more veterinarians while doing it in a more cost-effective manner for those students. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, anyone else at BPS?
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in support of SB 342, press star 9 to take your place in the queue now. Chair, there are no more callers willing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in opposition? And anyone in Las Vegas wishing to speak in opposition? Please go ahead, sir.
Hello, Will Bradley, retired Army officer, here as individual. I speak against SB 342. Let's stop being renters and start being owners. Instead of giving $8 million to another state, let's take that $8 million and start our own vet school and make this be a down payment and keep the money here in state. Nobody's mentioned the military. The military is short people too and is very lucrative. To be a military officer or veterinarian, they'll pay pretty much a full ride, undergrad and grad, for veterinarian candidates. I know not everybody's suited for the military, but that's a huge benefit for not only vets, for all people that want to be in college. But the incentive is already done. I moved here 7 years ago from South Carolina, thus the cute Southern accent. And the incentive is here. No taxes, great weather, and great entertainment. The incentive's done. The vets, if they're smart, will move here, regardless of whether we paid their college or not, or gave them a stipend. I'm concerned about contract laws. This contract's going to be very hard to enforce through cost of attorneys, jurisdictional issues, and bankruptcy laws. You declare federal bankruptcy, and it's kind of hard to fight that, especially as a state entity against an individual veterinarian. This is not capitalism. We should let the market work openly and let vets charge more in rural areas to subsidize their investment in their education. And I'm concerned this can open a Pandora's box for other professions. There's a shortage of airline pilots. I don't see a bill giving them $8 million to go to flight school. We don't have a flight school in the state of Nevada. So this could open up other professions to the detriment of our taxpayers. So I urge you, oppose this or do an amendment and reinvest $8 million in our own vet school. Thank you.
Thanks so much, sir. Anyone on the phones wishing to speak in opposition?
To testify in opposition of SB 342, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak in neutral? Neutral in Las Vegas? Neutral on the phones?
Testify neutral to SB 342, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
CYRUSHOJJY. I tried to raise my hand for support to ditto the comments. I don't know, the system didn't.
Please go ahead and do your
grab
support
my,
now.
Signal.
Please go ahead and do it now,
Okay,
Cyrus.
yeah, I'll just, ditto the comments, and, I agree. Irvine has done some good things. I just disagree the way it was built, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else, BPS?
There are no more callers who want to testify at this time.
Thank you. Senator Gokachia, if you would come back up, and I know a couple of people on the committee have questions for you. And we'll start with Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's been brought up a couple times during the hearing in some of the testimony, both for and against, or talking about a school, how to prop up a school and how much it would cost, because we're talking about an $8 million price tag with this. We're helping those students who are going out, and we're deferring their costs by about 50%. But how much would it cost to get a school going in the state of Nevada?
You're asking the wrong person first and foremost, but I'm sure there are people in the room. But if you think you can build a vet school for $8 million, that's exactly why Utah State is coming to us and contracting, because they want to, they've approved the money to build it, and it got them 40 students. That's what they're looking for, this contract and others, so they can actually, $200 million probably to build a good vet school.
So, Senator, you've got a lifeline, I think, behind you. I've got a number in mind. If it is smaller than the number I have in mind, I think it's going to be a no for many of us here. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about how much it's going to cost. But look behind you. There's got to be somebody who knows the number.
Yeah,
Chancellor?
He was supposed to keep all the opposition testimony out, and he failed there. So.
Thanks a lot, Pete.
That's got to hang together.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Dale Urquiaga, the acting chancellor, through you to Senator Hammond. I do not know the number. Now I feel like I'm on Price is Right, and I'm going to get this wrong. But I don't know the number of building a medical school, but I do know the process. And so, because the regent has requested that we examine how this works, and so the body understands in this system, we will go through a programming process to see how much it will cost and where it would go and which of our institutions are interested in that. You were familiar with the building of a second medical school in this state, and you know the cost there, and you know that it was done through a public-private partnership. So even if the number is higher or lower than the one you have written down on your sheet, I will tell you it's many more years to do that process than it is to move these folks through the pipeline at our sister state institution. So I believe this is the right approach for now, and the long-term plan for the state is, yes, we need to build a veterinary school, but we need to build many things, and so that will have to be prioritized and worked out through the normal process.
So you don't know if $8 million is 10% down payment, 5% down payment?
I wouldn't begin to speculate, sir.
I see. And by the way, I think we do have an aeronautical school here. I think Embry-Riddle operates out of Nellis Air Force Base, as a matter of fact, so we have something here. They don't. Okay, then I stand corrected. I taught across I taught across the hallway from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical School at Nellis Air Force Base for a couple of years. I didn't teach across from there? Okay, I was sleeping. Okay, a little different, I guess. Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Vice Chancellor. Do you want to do a closing comment?
Just a quick one, Madam Chair. I would really appreciate it if it's a policy committee, even without recommendation, if you can move it to finance. I think this bill is critical for the state of Nevada and our veterinary profession. So even if you have to move it without recommendation, let us live another day in finance. Thank you.
Well, Senator Gokachia, today's your lucky day. So we'll have a motion from Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a motion that we approve and pass Senate Bill 342.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Senator Flores. Any discussion from the committee members? Senator Donate.
Thank you so much, Chair Lang.
while we were asking questions, we did see that it would cost $17 million to build a new school in Texas Tech University system. So if Senator Goycochea wants to up the amount, I could also support that too. Just saying. So thank you so much.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll take it for a vote. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion unanimously carries. Would you carry the bill? You're welcome. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 342 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 347. And I hope that you've all had a chance to read the book.
Madam Chair, can we just say thank you to all the hardworking staff that had to carry these books around and give them to us? There may be a workers' comp claim coming up.
Senator Nache, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Lang, and good afternoon to the members of the Committee on Senate Education. For the record, my name is Fabian Duñate, and I represent Senate District 10 in the heart of Las Vegas. I come before you to speak on Senate Bill 347, which revises provisions relating to higher education. For this hearing, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Dava Moore, professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and we also have a few other members that will be speaking on this bill in case if there's any questions. I want to start off this presentation by clearing the room and being transparent. That is a type of legislator that I have committed to be and a value that I will always uphold. Senate Bill 347. Is this bill a direct attack on the governance structure of the Board of Regents, and will it begin to rein back the problems that we have seen over the last few years? The answer to that is yes, absolutely. For years, state senators and assembly members across the state have introduced legislation to begin revising the structure of our higher education system and retaining accountability for this governing body. As a member of this legislature, I have had conversations with many of my colleagues on this issue, and time again, we've come to the same conclusion. The structure of our system is broken. We have prolonged this conversation longer than what we have anticipated, and we should refuse the status quo of a broken system that cannot sustain itself any longer. Back in 2014, I started my freshman year at UNLV, and during that time that I was a student, we had 2 university presidents. But they weren't the last, and unfortunately, we've had a lot of hiccups along the way. Administrators have been forced out of their positions of intimidated. The Board of Regents have fabricated artificial divides, and there's no clear strategy on how we can move forward on the higher education system. We can agree on one simple fact. The Board of Regents have butchered the long-term employment of our administrators over and over again, and I, for one, have had enough. In the slide that I have displayed on the screen, I have screenshotted articles that have emerged over the years on the conduct of the Board of Regents governance model. Let me read a few of them for you. November 2022, Regents agree on an $110,000 settlement to oust the Chief of Staff after 3 months on the job. November 2022, Ethics Panel finds credible evidence of violations for top regents, recommends deferral. November 2021, in hostile workplace memo, Chancellor Melody Rose details incidents that made her feel undermined by 2 regents. April 2018, strife between donors regents over UNLV president comes amid broader effort to restructure higher ed system. March 2018, with Jessup's future in doubt, instability returns to UNLV. April 2016, emails show Nevada Higher Ed Agency misled legislature on funding study. And of course, most recently, as of last week, Regent spends hundreds claiming transparency fails to address records denial. I don't know if it's enough to continue. Enough is enough. We can do better. We must do better. The students and faculty of the system deserve an institution that is adequately funded, one that seeks to address student outcomes and achievement, not a system that is predicated on infighting and obstruction. The worst part of all of this was that I mentioned to you, I was a student between 2014 and 2018 at UNLV, and that was not too long ago. And the same system and problems are relevant today. We can and must do better, and Senate Bill 347 is our way to solve this long, pervasive issue. I know that this is a difficult conversation for all of us, and one that is incredibly complex beyond one person trying to solve this governance crisis. I recognize that we might not know all the answers, but my hope today is that we can begin to have the hard conversations on the work that we need to do in the interim to conduct over the and to address the needs and the longstanding issues of our higher education system. Chair Lang, at this time, I will hand it over to Dr. Dave Moore, who will present to you the provisions of this bill and our conceptual amendment.
Thank you. My name is Dr. David Demore. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Political Science at UNLV and the intern director of the Lindsay Institute in Brookings Mountain West, two donor-supported public policy centers housed at UNLV. I want to be clear that I'm not appearing before you on behalf of UNLV, as the university does not have a position on this bill. Rather, at the request of the bill's sponsor, I've been asked to provide technical assistance in light of the work that my colleagues and I have done on economic development, higher education reform, and integrating the two. SB 347 builds on legislation that's been introduced in previous sessions to modernize the organization of higher education and to provide pathways for legislative accountability over higher education. Yes, SB 347 is a long bill. However, most of SB 347 makes conforming changes to NRS to reflect the bill's three main components that I'd like to walk you through. First, SB 347 proposes to delineate the governance of the state's land-grant institutions to reflect the intent of the Nevada Constitution. Sections 55 and 56 designate UNR, UNLV, and DRI as the components of the state university defined in Article 11, Section 4 of the Nevada Constitution. This is consistent with SB 287 from the 2021 session, amending Chapter 549, defining the state's land-grant institutions. These three institutions would continue to be governed by the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada and compose what can be thought of as the constitutional box within NCHE. Limiting the regent's span of control to these institutions responds to legislative frustration regarding claims that NCHE and the regions are an independent fourth branch of government. These claims have been made for decades to thwart legislative oversight and higher education reform. The issue has arisen this session in the context of legislation proposing to implement collective bargaining and to reform policies related to sexual violence. SB 347 would not eliminate the constitutional barrier constraining the legislature. Only the passive SJR 7 in 2024 will do that. However, it will limit how and when these claims can be made. Second, SB 347 establishes separate governance of non-land grant institutions to create what can be thought of as the statutory box within NCHE. The second half of Section 56 removes the state and community colleges from the governance authority of the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada. This reform operationalized the notion that institutions that are not research universities with land-grant status should not be governed by a board that was created for that purpose. This proposed structure draws in part from AB 331 from 2017, introduced by then Assemblyman Hansen, and SB 321 from 2021, introduced by Senators Settlemeyer, Hammond, and Hansen. Section 51 through 53 establish separate seven-member boards of trustees for the state and community colleges and defines their authority. Appointments to four-year terms are to be made by the governor based upon recommendations vetted by the Legislative Commission. Representatives from local governments and the regional development authorities where each campus provides service would be on those boards, as well as non-voting faculty and student members. This governance structure also reflects that work that my colleagues and I have done on the regionalization of economic development. Nevada's regionally based approach to economic development can be strengthened by aligning its higher education institutions with their economic and demographic geography. These institutions and the communities and constituencies they serve will be better represented by governance that reflects their missions and service areas. Third, SB 347 proposed definitions of Nevada's higher education institutions that reflect their differing missions. Currently, there's no language in NRS defining what our higher education institutions are supposed to do. NRS 396 simply lists these entities as components of NCHE. Section 45 applies the Carnegie Classification of Institutions of Higher Education, defining the scope of degree granting authority to each institution. UNLV and UNR would be doctoral universities. Nevada State would be a master's college. Great Basin would be a baccalaureate college. And CSN, Truckee Meadows, and Western would be baccalaureate and associate's colleges. There's also a conceptual amendment to this bill to facilitate SB 347's implementation and to address concerns raised by the chancellor in discussions with the bill's sponsor, as well as to alleviate concerns that the bill would break up NCHE. So during the conceptual amendment puts forth the idea that during 2023-2024 interim, there'll be required a joint interim committee on education to establish a subcommittee on higher education to review, including but not limited to the following: the appropriate governance structures and oversights for the institutions that are reflective of their missions and service areas, evaluate appropriate funding and bonding structures to support the differing missions and constituencies served by these institutions, establish procedures for relinquishing all land held by NCHE and begin property transfers to the individual institutions, and establish procedures for credit transfers among institutions, and establish a cooperative arrangement in post-secondary education that is designed to permit the sharing of academic resources to offer qualified students the opportunity to enroll at other institutions for courses not available at an individual campus. Not included in the text of the amendment is the point that NCHE would remain the overarching organizational structure in which the governing boards live and where current system-level staff and service would remain. Thank you.
Chair Lang, that concludes our presentation. We're ready to answer questions.
Thank you. And if you just give me a minute, I need to let people know in Las Vegas, there's a couple people in the audience. We are going to lose video feed for Education Committee in the Las Vegas. So if you want to still tune into this hearing, you'll need to dial in by phone. And if you get a paper, I will give you the number. It will be 888-475-4499. And when you're prompted, provide this meeting ID, 853-310-70531. And press the pound button. And when prompted, press the pound button for your participant ID. And if you have any issues, you can call this number for help, 775-684-6990. Now, I know that was a lot of numbers. I hope that helps. Also, someone in the building there could also probably help you if you need help. And with that, we'll go to committee questions. Anyone on the committee have questions? Senator Neal. Of course.
I know. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a general question and then I have some detailed questions because clearly this is a theory. So with the existing sections that you're keeping, which are 45, 51, and then 52 through 57, you have this overarching NCHE that's still in place, is what you said. So with the Board of Trustees under these different sections, how exactly are the powers and duties going to be, changed, relayed? Because just tell me about that theory. How will that work in real life? The powers.
Sure. Thank you so much, Senator Neal, Fabian Doñate, for the record. Before I answer that question, I think it's important maybe to have our legal counsel establish what the ruling had decided on and then how we arrived to what is permissible and what's not permissible. I think that would help before I answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Asher Killian, Committee Counsel, and I will apologize in advance for what is probably a lengthy answer. And I will preface my comments by saying that my opinion today is consistent with the opinion of this office back in 2014 that was publicly issued to the late Senator Debbie Smith as chair of the Subcommittee on Governance and Funding of the interim committees interim committee to conduct an interim study concerning community colleges. And for the sake of not putting the room to sleep, I'm going to omit all of our references to case law supporting this opinion, but they can all be found in that opinion that was issued by this office back in 2014. Generally, the legislature does not derive its constitutional powers from the text of the state constitution, but rather exercises plenary power only as limited by the state and federal constitutions. In the absence of any clear constitutional limitation on the legislature is empowered to act. Limitations on the legislature's power must be strictly construed in favor of the power of the legislature to legislate. Under Article 3, Section 1 of the Nevada Constitution, there are only 3 departments of the state government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and all parts of the government belong to one of those departments. The legislature is the legislative department. By contrast, the Board of Regents, as a state agency of the executive department created by the state constitution, has no general, inherent, or common law powers, but only those powers conferred expressly or by implication by the Constitution. Its functions are therefore narrow in scope, and as all other agencies of the executive department, it is subject to legislative regulation under appropriate circumstances. The education article of the Nevada Constitution, which is Article 11, uses 3 different terms to describe 3 different and distinct levels of the state educational system: common schools, normal schools, and the university or the state university. Article 11, Section 2 requires the legislature to provide for a uniform system of common schools, which is commonly understood as the K-12 system. Article 11, Section 4 requires the legislature to establish a state university, which is controlled by a board of regents. And Article 11, Section 8 reserves the land grant funding received by the state of Nevada back in the mid-1800s for the state university. Article 11, Section 5 authorizes the legislature to establish normal schools and such different grades of schools from the primary department to the university as in the legislature's discretion it may deem necessary. Based on this plain language of the Constitution, it's the opinion of our office that the framers intended to give the legislature exclusive control over the establishment and governance of the intermediate level of the state educational system, namely those institutions in between the common schools and the state university, which were historically known as common schools, but today are akin to institutions known as community colleges and state colleges. Thus, given the plain, ordinary, and usually accepted meanings of the terms used in the education article, there is a clear distinction between a university and a community college. Because the term university is the express term used in the education article that defines the Board of Regents' narrowly defined constitutional power over higher education, and because the term university has a meaning that is separate and apart from the meaning of the term community college, it is the opinion of this office that the education article does not give the Board of Regents exclusive control over the governance of community colleges. In addition, it's the opinion of this office that any expansive reading of the term university to include all conceivable institutions of higher education within its scope would also be an unreasonable interpretation of the term that would reject the plain, the ordinary, and the obvious in favor of the artificial, the unreasonable, and the absurd. Since it's a fundamental rule of constitutional construction that the state constitution should be interpreted to avoid unreasonable or absurd results, our office rejects that reading of the term university. Furthermore, even if there were any doubt, ambiguity, or overlapping in the meanings of the terms university and community college, such doubt, ambiguity, or overlapping would have to be resolved in favor of the legislature's inherent power to legislate. Any other interpretation would ignore the basic rule of constitutional construction that the language of the state constitution must be strictly construed in favor of the power of the legislature to enact the legislation under it. We're aware of an opinion of the Attorney General from 1968 that comes to a contrary conclusion, and our office has disagreed with the Attorney General's office on this question since at least that time. As a preliminary matter, it's important to note that the opinion of the Attorney General does not constitute binding legal authority or precedent. An opinion of the Attorney General is entitled only to the persuasive weight that a court thinks is proper, based upon the soundness of its legal reasoning and the citations to authority that support its opinion. An opinion of the Legislative Council is entitled to the same persuasive weight as an opinion of the Attorney General. Based on our research and analysis, we believe that the 1968 opinion of the Attorney General fails to apply the correct rules of constitutional construction to the education article. As a result, we believe that the 1968 opinion of the Attorney General improperly construes the education article against the inherent power of the legislature to enact legislation. The short version of that answer is, we believe the education article gives the Board of Regents exclusive control over the state university being the land-grant institution in this state. All other institutions of higher education are within the province of the legislature to create and provide for the governance of, are not required to be governed by the Board of Regents, and can be created, destroyed, and governed as the legislature wishes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I apologize for the lengthy
No,
answer.
that's fine.
No, it was really
That
good.
was really good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Senator Neal.
So let me re-ask this question in a different way. Based on the plenary power that I know exists, that was just stated, how do you intend to unravel, and I know you have the interim committee, but you must have ideas, how do you intend to unravel the money that is now going to all of these institutions?
Thank you so much, Senator Neal. Fabian Doñate for the record. So now that we've had the explanation as to what we are confined to based on the Constitution and what we're not, we went through the practice of trying to figure out what is the appropriate model for our state. As we know, there are other states. There was an interim discussion long before this year as to what it would look like to create the different tier structures, and we saw models of Maryland, et cetera. That study was conducted for the state before in previous sessions. And what was made the determination is we could fit into different models. Now, what we've had elected officials say before is there have been preferences to split the community colleges from the state universities. There has been discussion as to adopting certain models, for instance, like California, where you have the UC system and then you have different structures for each of the different entities. What I came to the conclusion, which is you see that reflected in the amendment, I think a weakness that our state has compared to other states that have that model is probably our state population. But the governance itself probably could be restructured if we wanted to take a look at it deeper during the interim, where we have separate governance structures. So the Board of Regents stays the same with the university because we're tied to that due to the case law of the Constitution. But then what we could do during the interim, which is why the bill says determine appropriate governance structures, would be in that portion, we can start to see and say, okay, can these community colleges, et cetera, start to have local board of trustees where the duties are now delineated to those local entities so that you can have faculty, student representation, and folks who represent, say, economic development, so that they can be a part of the decision-making and they can make further decisions as to how the institution is governed. And then what we would presume under this amendment is you still need some organization above to help narrate student achievements, outcomes, graduation, and make strides into those structures. So what I would see, the way that I would see it is we approach it the same way that we did with K through 12. Now, in terms of the funding question, I think that's an important question to ask with this policy. It is my belief, in the amendment, you see it talks about evaluate appropriate funding and bonding structures. We've had discussions in this committee this year as to what the future of higher ed funding looks like. That has been a conversation that we figured before. I come from the position, and this is just me speaking, that the unfortunate reality is we find ourselves where there's a divide between the universities and everyone else. The universities are structured more towards economic development and research because of the faculty, versus the community colleges have a different set of students that have different needs. And oftentimes we find ourselves into this pull game where we're trying to fight for the same resources. I believe an appropriate structure would be we fund the universities differently than we fund the community colleges, because the students that go to the community colleges have different needs, whether they're taking remedial courses, whether they're from other countries, et cetera. The universities have a different mission, which is what we try to establish as part of the tier structure in this bill. And so what I would hope in the interim is we can have the appropriate discussions as to how big do those boards look like, what is a delineation between responsibilities of the Board of Trustees and the Board of Regents, And then how is the role of NCHE to facilitate everything to come together? You know, we've had discussions as to if we break the system apart, which was how the bill was originally structured, how does that play out with bonding? Could there be a sentiment where the community colleges might not be able to receive the same bonding structure as they did before? I think that's a valid question, which is why we decided in this bill to keep the same structure as a whole. And I think, you know, there's also the question of land. NCHE has a lot of land that has been donated by former alumni or that has been acquired, and so we have to take a consideration because that also plays into the money aspect. Overall, I think when it comes to funding, et cetera, I believe that it should follow student outcomes. And that has been something that we have struggled with because it doesn't reflect the way that we intended the system right now. It's not structured to help the students that have the most need. And, you know, in my alma mater, when I went to the University of Maryland, the mayor sat as part of the governing body because they were a part of the city planning process. They wanted the university and the city to be arm in arm because when the city was planning its new bus system or its new city hall or new restaurants, or they wanted to pass new abatements, et cetera, by the university system, it could collaborate together. When there was housing that was going to be built for these students, they would collaborate with the city. And I think that's something that we are missing from our system that could potentially look at as incorporating and bringing us more together. But I'll let Professor DeMore speak as well.
David DeMore for the record. As someone who lived through the funding formula a year or 10 years ago when that was done, this came up. That this was going to really favor the universities, and it did. And the universities have done well over the last decade at the detriment of all the other schools. The other part of the funding formula is there was never done, a cost study was never done in Nevada. It was all based upon cost analysis done in states that look nothing like Nevada. So we don't really have a sense of what those costs are. Hopefully, if we can get this bill to finance, that can be addressed over there, given the governor's comments about wanting to look at the funding sources. So they have different missions. Some of those programs, particularly some of the workforce development stuff, is very expensive and hard to do, but we're not funding that, and I think that's where we struggle. There's also, I think, an incentive for a lot of these schools to offer more upper division because those pay more in the funding formula.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, okay, I'm going to re-ask this a different way. I heard everything you said. So currently, there is a funding formula in play. So community college, NSC, I mean, we saw all the charts in this committee. So what happens, you get these governance structures, and now the student services and the weights or the formulas that are applied to those institutions cannot support those institutions, right? Because we also in this committee had a conversation about what does increased fees mean to students and their ability to attend, right? Clearly it's a deterrent in attendance. So what is the theory on how to make each school have enough money to pay for what they currently have on the drop-down model that exists now, where they're getting X amount of dollars under this formula for this performance metric, for this student, et cetera? What will that look like? Because it's to me, it seems like there will still be some winners and losers because the poverty that is in certain institutions is not going to go away. The ability to pay fees is not going to go away. So who's absorbing the cost?
David DeMore for the record. I think that's where you need to do a real funding analysis. What does it really cost to deliver the services you want these schools to provide? We don't know the answer to that. I think that's part of that. The other part of, I think, with the governance structure we're talking about here is you allow more partnerships, right? That you allow more public-private partnerships here. One of the models that we really look at is Arizona State. As someone who's been very, very aggressive in this space, not only just in terms of building, but also providing funding for programming here. So if you have your economic development represented on your local on these governing boards, you have your local governments, you have representatives of those interests, that opens up pathways that are really, really hard to do with a state board that's more concerned with, that's more university-based. So I think that those are opportunities that you see happening all over. There was a bill over on the assembly side to sort of codify that language as well that I think would help move that forward.
Madam Chair, one last question. Okay, so third question, different area. So also in this committee, we heard, I mean, well, not, well, it was in this committee. I've heard more of it in Senate Finance, but in this committee, we've also talked about, we saw charts on staffing, professors, regular teachers that are in the system, LOAs, et cetera, right? We also saw some demographics. So some schools are heavier in LOA versus professors versus, you know, certain, I guess, what they would need in order to formulate their mission. So there's a pay discrepancy on top of that, right? So how do we expect, because now under the structure in the bill in those sections, it looks like, well, it said specific language on page 48 that they will have the authority to hire, fire, discipline, evaluate performance of the president, and I'm assuming also hire, fire, bring in staff. So if there's a question mark on the money in terms of what it would need to fund just for student services, just to maintain the campuses, what is the thought or the theory in your mind about the pay inequity that has been inherent in the system and how you're going to find the right staffing in order to sustain the schools now? I mean, because these are current issues. They're not going to disappear just because you create a different governance structure. But now you're saying you have to maintain yourself and put your hand out individually as an institution for your own separate money from the state to manage yourself. And so I want to hear more about that, because I'm also super curious about the magic bucket of money that's going to come into the sky in 27. All right.
Thank you, Senator Neil. Fabian Duñate for the record. So I'll start this off, and then Professor DeMoore can also speak as well. So what I envisioned was, I think the reason why I structured the amendment first to talk about the governance and second the funding piece is because I came to the same questions that you did, which was what I envision is the delineation of governance is one model, and then the funding mechanism as to how we approach institutions should be a separate model. In my ideal world, we should separate, in terms of funding, the universities from the community colleges. I think that is a value proposition that we should look at, and I think that's part of the same initiatives that, that's why you're hearing elected officials and past governors saying we need to look at the funding model again for how this system is structured. I believe we should go through the same practice that K through 12 did, and how we added the weights and distributed. I mean, it's a hard discussion, but it's one that has never been entertained. And I think the first part is probably starting it off in the interim by creating a specific subcommittee that looks on education, on higher education, because we deserve a structure where we focus in on these issues specifically, and we continue to build off of it one way or another. Are these governance structures settled law yet? No, I think that's something that we have to consider, and we have to start having those discussions as to what we want in the long term. And I think it's appropriate to ask the questions of how funding would be tied to these institutions, which I would hope that we can solve in the near term. So, Dr. DeMoore.
And to last to Dave DeMoore for the record. In the other part is you'll have the presidents here making their case for you, right? They're advocating this is what we need to make this institution. You want us to do this type of workforce development, this is what it's going to cost. And you're hearing that directly from the presidents and their board of trustees. And that's going to be a decision for the legislature to do that. But I also, again, don't underestimate the entrepreneurial piece that can come with this.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple observations. You're aware of how bad our K through 12 system and where we're ranked nationwide? And so the thought, and are you aware where our university systems are ranked? Pretty respectful. And the very thought that this legislative body would take over control and ruin a really good, highly ranked, based on our performance of what we do through K through 12, is just makes me very anxious. So just wondering, worried about I see all the popularity stuff and the personnel stuff, which happens everywhere, happens in this building. But that, in my mind, doesn't even come close to the justification of splitting up a system. So what I'm looking at is what do other states do in their systems of management? Because to break out every single one of our community colleges and have them then in separate budget process come before us and tell us what they need versus an overall global system of a unified higher education system that starts them out from pathways of the dual credits in high school that then match what they can then on to the and the university systems. I think that cohesion is what makes our university systems good, and I really worry about so my question really is about what other states structure in their university systems and funding of the community colleges versus their university systems. And I would also throw out that I have big concerns about your definition of what a land-grant school is. I would say only UNR is a land-grant school, but go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Titus. I'm going to answer the first portion of your question before we talk about the management and systems that we've seen in other states. I would refute your statement in terms of how the systems, what the current system outcomes are. We don't compare to other state universities when it comes to our graduation rates. I think that was something that was made clear in terms of the presentations that we've had. Students don't graduate in 4 years. We have a very high drop-off of students at the state universities that don't make it all the way. And I'm sure that disparity is increased when we look at the students that go to community colleges, et cetera. My position has always been that we should follow the students based on need. And we should look at developing systems in place to support them as they graduate from K through 12 and they go on to the continuum. Because what we have right now is not working. We know that from just looking at statistics. We have a lower percentage of students that graduate compared to other state universities that work really well. And I think it's a reflection of that we need to find some way and revise the way that we fund our universities and our state colleges and different institutions so that we can continue to close those gaps. The theory that I have for the governance model is obviously if we still have a 45% graduation rate, et cetera, whatever the value was that was presented earlier, it comes to question, are we paying enough attention as the governance exists to the individual institutions? Is the Board of Regents too broad, and are they actually delivering in terms of the general oversight that they need to contribute to? I think based on these articles, based on what I've seen, I cannot attest to that. And I think that from my perspective, carefully reviewing the governance, bringing it back to the local level, making sure that other individuals who understand the institution, who either work there or have gone to or are currently going there as students, that their voices are also reflected. And I think that should always be something that we should encompass as part of our discussions. And I'll let Dr. DeMoore speak as well.
Dave DeMoore with the record. There's basically as many different structures there are states across the country. So we're most similar to probably North Dakota, Hawaii, and I would say Alaska. Most states have what they call community colleges actually exist in their communities. They're governed, a lot of times they're funded with some local government, like in Arizona, for example. Certainly see that in California, where you have community college districts that are cut up around the state there. So every state's a little bit different because they realize that those sort of missions are different and they tie the governance and the structures to them on that. So you really can't generalize. The legislature's done a lot of work on that. If you go back and look at some of the review studies, and this certainly came up during the interim study in 2014. That was probably the last time it was revisited here on this. So that's an argument, is consolidation or not on that. The land grant point, obviously there's a bill I'm assuming you didn't vote for that, but that put that in statute. And to that end, right, there are beginning to be joint faculty appointments with UNLV through cooperative extension and UNR. There was a grant program, so we're starting to integrate that a little bit more to use some of the excess funding in Clark County to support some of the missions there. So that part of that is moving forward still. Certainly UNR oversees the farm. They oversee the Cooperative Extension Program, all the sort of core components that integrate with the federal government.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, if you want to step back, we'll take public comment. And just to let everyone know, I may have to leave just shortly because I have to do a bill presentation in growth and infrastructure, but we'll get through as much as we can. Okay, anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Warren Hardy. This is my first time before this august committee this session. It's good to be here. I'm particularly honored to be in front of a committee whose staff is the daughter of the great Pepper Sturm, who is a legendary LCB individual. So it's an honor to be here. I'm representing Warren Hardy, representing the Council for Better Nevada today. I do want to thank Senator Donante for his passion on this matter. I too am a graduate of UNLV and a product of the Nevada system of higher education. It became evident to me during my time here that the framers of the Constitution clearly contemplated the legislature and the Board of Regents and the system of higher education as being a partnership in the higher education. Unfortunately, that partnership's never been particularly solid, and during my years in the legislature, I saw it digress and erode even more through the years. I support this legislation and the intent of this implementation process because I think it's high time that the legislature get back in the co-pilot seat. I've said that a number of times on the record, but I do think it's time for the legislature to get back in the co-pilot seat with regard to higher education. And it's clear to me that statutorily defining the missions of the institutions and how those will be funded appropriately is really the threshold issue that needs to be addressed before we can move further down that road. So again, on behalf of the Council for Better Nevada, Warren Hardy, in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Paul Moratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of this bill. Our board chairman, our government affairs chairman will be calling in support, but we do believe that reform is important, and we appreciate the bill's sponsor and the work he's done with Dr. DeMore to bring this bill forward, because as we know, there has been concerns for many years about the operations of the system, and that's not reflected in the current leadership of the chancellor. We appreciate what he's trying to do, but we do believe this is a systematic issue that needs to be addressed for the students in our state. Thank you.
Thanks so much. BPS, if we could go to the phones, I'm pretty sure we have people on there.
If you would like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in queue.
Good afternoon. This is Stephanie Goodman. I'm actually calling in opposition of this. I'm not sure.
Okay, if you could hold on for a minute, because we're in support.
You didn't say support, so I just put my name in the queue.
BPS, if you could load up people that are here in support. Thank you.
To testify in support of SB 347, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller, last three digits 130, press star 6 to unmute yourself, please.
It's Stephanie Goodman again. It's queuing me to unmute myself.
Let's go ahead and just do this opposition, then we'll move forward.
unmuted.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Hugh Anderson. I'm on the Government Affairs Committee Chairman for the Vegas Chamber and a Chamber Trustee. The Vegas Chamber is in support of Senate Bill 347 and appreciates Senator Donat's bringing the bill forward so we can have meaningful discussions about how much needed higher education governance reform is necessary in Nevada. As Nevada's job creators, our members believe that we need to address the challenges and instability that exist in our higher education system governance. The primary focus for any higher education system must be about increasing student achievement, aligning workforce training with the needs of employers, and being future-focused on the economic development needs of our state. A transparent, stable, and equitable public higher education system is essential to achieving this focus. We recognize that the bill in front of you is a significant change in how we do things currently, but we must look at how we can improve for the betterment of the next generation of Nevada students. To do nothing is not an option. Reform initiatives, if done correctly, can have significant, meaningful, and productive results. We believe that this bill will provide us the opportunity to do this right. That's why the Vegas Chamber supports the key provisions of the bill. The Joint Interim Committee on Education to establish a subcommittee on higher education to review the governance and oversight of our 8 public institutions will be an important part of this process during the interim period. We believe that this review is paramount to the future success of higher education in Nevada, which includes community colleges, our baccalaureate teaching college, and research universities. SB 347 would also allow for the review of funding and bonding mechanisms to better support the missions of these institutions and the 100,000 students enrolled in the NCHE system. The bill would also provide for credit transfers so students are not impacted in an adverse manner. Change will not come about on its own. Recent history of Nevada's higher education system has proven this. That's why passage of SB 347 is so important and will take a legislative action to enact that change. We know that this is not a simple bill, but one that is complex. We must be bold to take the next steps forward to build a better Nevada together. I appreciate your time and consideration in supporting Senate Bill 347.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
This is Susan Prophet. I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club, and I oppose this bill for one reason, and that is because it is completely usurping the power of the regents that we voted in 2 years ago. So this bill is actually meant to take the power away from the regents and the people in the community and give it back to the legislatures. Now, whenever you let government make all the decisions for you, you get what you deserve. I suggest that people do not pass this bill because it is not in our best interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next caller in favor.
If you've just joined us and would like to testify in support of SB 347, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to speak in opposition?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm still Dale Urquiaga, the acting chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. So I come before you to oppose this bill. I don't think that surprises anyone. The system does not support deconsolidation. So having said that, I want to say a couple more things about the conceptual amendment. First of all, I appreciate Senator Donate reaching out to me, had a long conversation with me, allowed me to share my worries with him. I have told you before, I worry as chancellor about many of these issues. He has reflected many of my worries in the idea for a study and an interim committee. And so I would represent to you that as I have to him, we would actually support the interim examination of these issues. Senator Neal has raised other issues about the funding formula and how those monies would flow. And in the time since I have spoken to Senator Donate about this bill, I have thought of another one. Section 51 does allow the boards of trustees of community colleges to appoint the president, but it is rather silent on one of the other employees. All NCHE employees who are not in the classified service have an employment contract, and many of my employees have tenure. All of that is provided under the NCHE code which according to the Supreme Court of the state of Nevada has the force of law. I don't know what happens when you move all of those people into a different institution with a different governing body. Their rights probably follow them. They could sue, but the code doesn't follow them because the code, as your lawyer has expressed, is based on the regent's constitutional authority over its institutions. And this body decided 50 years ago, roughly, to give regents control of the community colleges. And so, for once, I agree with your counsel. The legislature could take them away because you gave them to the regents. So that part I do not discount. What I would caution you, my concern with a conceptual amendment, and Madam, I apologize if I'm going to go over my 2-minute time. Thank you. My concern with the conceptual amendment is that it maintains the new governance structure and those boards while studying the governance structure. I'm not sure that that governance structure would work, given all of those other questions I have raised about my employees, about bonding, about the funding formula, and most importantly, I will say to you, my overall opposition to this idea at this time until you diligently take an interim to work through a study is the effect it has on my students. We have talked about transferability of credit from my 2-year institutions to my 4-year institutions. If they're all different institutions with different boards, that's 6 boards setting policy over credit transfer. No offense to you all, but boards and bodies like yours don't always agree. And so today, where our transfer policies are held in regent policy, they would be disparate. And I predict that over time, they would move slowly and slowly away from one another. And so a student at one community college might matriculate to my institution at UNLV, and another might not. So I just give you caution because of my students over this splitting of the system. And my worry of the day is about my employees and what that would look like. So I will say again, the system is opposed to the bill. I appreciate the senator's attention and respect to me to work through this. And I think we all agree that an interim study and a funding formula study, I have said before in this committee, I agree our funding formula needs an update. And so I would like to work with the senator, and as this bill goes to Senate Finance or wherever it goes, to continue that conversation about interim and study and not changing the governance structure today.
Thanks so much.
Kent Irvin, State President, Nevada Faculty Alliance. The NFA is affiliated with the American Association of University Professors, the national organization that advocates for academic freedom and shared governance in higher education. A major change like this in the governance structure of the Nevada system of higher education, regardless of its merits, will require detailed study and planning. SB 347, as modified in the posted conceptual amendment, is simply unworkable. An interim committee has no power. So SB 347 immediately creates new governing boards for 5 colleges, but it has no timeline or implementation measures. An interim committee has no power to enact enabling legislation. There are multiple retained references to an administrative office that is deleted in the amendment. It would appear that the governing boards would be under the control of that deleted office in the executive branch, which raises serious concerns about the authority of the new boards and the protection of academic freedom from political and partisan influence. For example, Section 51, subsection 10, there the regulatory authority of the new boards appears to be subservient to approval of that deleted executive branch office and its policies and procedures, not regulations, policies and procedures, that would not apparently require a full regulatory approval process. For these reasons, we must oppose SB 347 as presented in the conceptual amendment. There are problems with other sections that I could explain if I'm asked. We do support the formation of a legislative subcommittee on higher education, both in the interim and during sessions. With SJR 7 on the horizon, the workload of the legislature to manage higher education will increase dramatically. We need the legislature to step up to do that hard work and to focus on the improvement of higher education for Nevada and our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There we go. Anyone on the phones, BPS speaking in opposition?
To testify in opposition of SB 347, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Goodman. I am a regent in the Nevada system of higher education. I'm calling in opposition of SB 347 for many of the reasons that the Chancellor gave and Dr. Irvin. Additionally, I just wanted to share with this board what I took from this bill. This is going to limit student access. It is going to make it more difficult for students to transfer credits between institutions. And then it's going to add a level of bureaucracy which is not going to benefit our students. We have high school seniors that are sitting in classes right now. Some of them know that they're going to college, and it's still intimidating to go to college. And then we have those students who are essentially opting out on their own. Either they think they can't go to college, or they can't afford college, or even the worst, they think they're not worthy to go to college. And those are the kids that we have to grab, and that's what we're working on. I have been in meetings with all of the presidents of the system, and I hadn't heard of this. So I actually picked up the phone and I called, did my due diligence. I called all of the presidents of our community colleges and of our Nevada State College. And although there are issues and there are things that we need to address, and we've had meetings regarding this, none of these presidents feel that this is exactly what we need or anything close to what we need to fix the problems that we have. We work better when we develop robust relationships, not putting different institutions in silos. Nothing ever works well in silos. And so I would ask this committee to please consider these points as you vote for this bill, and obviously I'm against it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much. Next caller, please.
This is Casey Rogers for the record. I oppose this bill absolutely because I look at the future of this and I see this as just an experiment as a way to desensitize us to the appointed higher personnel. I feel like it's trying to take it away from the voter and a way to gain power. I absolutely oppose this bill. I think you really need to consider the bureaucracy that they're trying to create here. And remember that NSHE comes from our kids, our choice. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Next caller, please.
Hi, Katrin Ivanov, I-V-A-N-O Frank, a.k.a. Missy Fixit, Assembly District 42, Senate District 9. I am opposed this bill. For the sake of time, I'll just say ditto. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
Caller, last 3 digits 6. You're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Rojas, Assembly District 12, Senate District 21. I am opposed to this bill. It's just going to create too much bureaucracy, and I don't think it's a good solution for long-term education. Thank you. Bye.
Sir, could you please repeat your name? We missed it. Sir?
Sorry, Chair, I moved on.
Oh, okay. Anyone else on the line?
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in opposition of SB 347, press star 9.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G-U-N-G-E-R, Nevada Faculty Alliance. The impetus that has propelled SB 347, to the best of my knowledge, accompanies much larger plans to divide the state up into workforce service areas, each with a community college at its hub and overseen by a board of business and community leaders. Given the recent dysfunctions of NSHE with 5 chancellors over the past 7 years and a board of regents that has been distracted by internecine issues unrelated to education, I sympathize with this bill's intended attempts at reforms. However, SB 347 is so internally contradictory as written and so lacking in advanced planning for its potential effects to reassign governing authority that we must oppose its passage. With apologies to Senator Oñate, who has stated its intentions, and to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Damore, there's nothing in this bill to prevent these proposed boards from replicating similar dysfunctions to those which this bill claims to remedy. In sum, though the higher education ship may feel pilotless now, does that justify launching all our schools onto separate lifeboats and setting them adrift on the overwritten sea of this bill? We think not. We recommend instead that the proposals of SB 347 be included in the governor's plan from an interim committee to study the funding of and structures of higher education in our state. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
DYRUSHOJJATY. I will echo the comments of Casey and Susan Prophet. Yield.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers will testify at this time.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak in neutral on Carson City? Anyone wishing to speak in neutral on the telephones?
To testify in neutral to SB 347, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 347, and I will open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public comment? Anyone on the phones wishing to give public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no calls willing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will close the hearing today, Wednesday, April 12th, on Senate Education, and we will see you at 1 o'clock on Friday. Right in this room, we'll be considering 5 bills and that work session, and that's all we'll do that day. Thank you so much.